Hi everybody, this is Agnesa from No Sediment, and today I am in a bit of Frankenstein mood. Is it alive? Alive and kicking? Or did we just wait a little too long? So today we are going to taste some older wines and see how well they are still holding their ground. There is a belief that sometimes really annoys me. It is when people assume that wine can only be enjoyed within a certain window. It is completely fine if you yourself prefer to drink wine with some age or with more age. But guilting people into thinking that they open their wine too soon? Nah, that's not me. If anything, I would argue that you cannot open wine too soon, but you can for sure open wine too late. How is that, you ask? Well, simply, Watson. In my view, wine is ready to be enjoyed the moment it is bottled and released into the market. It is wine with all the fruits and flavors that can offer us joy in a glass. But wine is also on its journey to become a vinegar. And once it has lost all its fruit and body and acidity is all that is left, I think it is safe to say that the wine is gone. That is the moment when wine has been opened too late. Yes, great wines, iconic wines can most certainly age in bottle for decades and over that time develop extra flavor complexity, open more angles of aromas, and in the case of red wines offer more integrated, often softer textured tannins. Primary fruit flavors gradually lose their ground and wine starts to show more earthy, dried fruit and savory characters. I have enjoyed old, aged wines, some of them so magnificent that I still often remember their flavors on my tongue. And I have also enjoyed some top examples of young vintages, and they too have offered me an enormous pleasure and depth of flavors. However, my palate tends to gravitate towards fruit, and your palate may gravitate towards earthy complexity. And both of us would be absolutely right. It's a matter of personal preference. Saying this, I have decided to play a little necromancer at the end of this year. I have gathered few oldies, all more than 50 years old. Now, we do know that for wine to age gracefully, few things must align. First, vintage matters. No matter how skilled the winemaker is, nature ultimately shapes the wine and its longevity. And of course, the winemaker matters too. They have the decision-making power and they can doom a great vintage or elevate a challenging one. But none of that would matter if the wine has been stored poorly. So, we have Brunello from an outstanding 1970 vintage. It is interesting to read the weather reports from that year, which already talk about heat spikes and drought conditions, both in Tuscany and Bordeaux. Yet, at that time, no one could have foreseen what was about to come in future. Anyhow, Fattoria de Barbi is reported as one of the top producers of that vintage. We have a slightly different story with Chateau Lascombes though. It is also from the great vintage of 1970 and on paper, by all classifications and credentials, a top estate. After all, it is classed as second growth, Grand Cru Classé. However, many reports argue that it used to be one of the underperformers, especially during that period. Next, we have a uniquely shaped bottle of Chateauneuf-du-Pape 1964, a vintage which apparently has made wines of great power and richness, but not necessarily great aging capacity. Now, Chateauneuf-du-Pape is a wine that I personally believe has a great aging potential, but because it offers generous fruit early in its life, and because it is relatively affordable, many bottles are simply enjoyed quite young. Lastly, we have appellation very dear to me, Barolo, from the exceptional 1957 vintage produced by the historic estate Marchesi di Barolo. I have heard many argue that Barolo is not a wine for aging, with one argument being that these wines tend to have already high volatile acidity at release. Well, maybe that argument held some ground 20 or 30 years ago, but certainly not today. Now, let's taste these wines and see if they have survived the pressure of time. Alright, so we did a small experiment. We started to open these wines with Coravan, but essentially it failed. So we opened every bottle on its own. And now I feel sad that we did not record it because it was quite a scene as well. But we will start with wine number 1, which is Fattoria di Barbi from the vintage 70. The color of this wine does not seem very inviting. So you will see right away. I will maybe put it like this. See, it's really brown. I don't want to be too aggressive with this wine as well. And in all honesty, it smells vinegary. Now, Brunello is a wine that sometimes does show that kind of balsamic character, and I really like it when it's, mixed with fruits. And sometimes you can actually take fresh strawberries and dip them in this really thick, almost sweet tasting balsamic. And that is a beautiful dessert. So the top Brunellos in their youth can smell of that, strawberries dipped in the vinegar or the balsamic. Here it is more vinegar. There's hardly any fruit. Before you put anything in your mouth and taste it and swallow it, you have an option to smell it. And it is the first information you can analyze whether or not it is actually safe to put in your mouth. So this smells vinegary. It does not smell inviting, not at all. It's not like I smell this wine, oh, I just cannot wait to taste it. That's not the case. But for the sake of experiment, I'm going to do that. Yeah, I mean, this wine is not complete goner, but it is with 2/3 of its all body and all its soul already moved to the next realm. It is almost only acidity that you feel on the palate. There is a bit of tannin, that sticks to your palate, that sticks to your gums and tongue and adds a bit of texture. But there is no fruit, there is no mid-palate, there is no that depth and body that I often like in Brunello so much. Saying this, it does not mean that the producer is bad or the vintage is bad. We already established that it is not the case. It could also be, the way it was aged, and the cork was not particularly long, but you already see the condition of this cork as well. But yes, with wine number 1, it is unfortunately preparing to leave us. And from the scale from 1 to 10, how alive is this wine? I will say it is 3. So very much towards the end of its last breath. So let's move to wine number 2, which is the same vintage from Bordeaux. You know what they say about Bordeaux? Bordeaux always seems younger than it is. This actually shows something. This is interesting. And the color is so much more exciting. So we do have, of course, these really brown, hints, some amber element on the outer rim. But we do have some reddiness to it. So it's like a brickish color, brick color. So that's nice. And we do have some really dried cherries, some raisins in it. And I think there is some hint of chocolate. Saying this, I of course don't know how long this wine would survive in a glass. These oldies, these old wines, they tend to not live as long in the glass, as maybe some younger vintages. Because younger vintages, they have way more energy and they have way more power just to retain themselves in the glass. And these really old wines, they tend to, evaporate quicker, lose their ground quicker in the glass. This is also one of the reasons why I never would decant really old vintages. Even if the wine would have a lot of sediment, I would not decant it. Because imagine you have lived more than 50 years in a bottle, with a limited oxygen, and then all of a sudden you are thrown in this decanter with a lot of oxygen. Out of that pure shock, you just, die. We have to be very gentle with these wines. And this wine also shows a bit of spiciness, maybe like turned damp earth, black earth. Yeah, this is not all goner. Let's taste it. Now, even on the palate, it is much more vibrant than the wine number one was. It is not vibrant, you know, youthful, but there is more energy to it. And the fruit is not all gone as well. I did have acidity dominance from the very beginning, but it was nice to feel some of that fruit sweetness swoop in at the mid palate as well. And there was a bit of body. Yes, it was crumbling. Yes, it was weak, but it had body. So despite the fact that this is supposed to be a relatively weaker estate, at least at that time, it is holding its ground really well. And look at the cork. When I was pulling out this cork, I was really surprised because the quality, how long it is amazing. And you see the wine has penetrated through all the cork, but it seems that it still fulfilled its function and it was protecting wine. From the scale from 1 to 10, how alive this wine is, I will give 7. Let's move to wine number 3, which is Chateauneuf-du-Pape from vintage 64. Okay, so this wine, color-wise, also shows more vibrancy than the wine number 1. Maybe the wine number 1 was really kept in a poor conditions. Because even this one, it shows, you know, some of that garnet, that amber color. This was brown. It had no vibrancy. This shows a bit of that amber color. And I'm sorry, but I have like a cork part floating in it. And interestingly, it does show fruit. Because before, when I was preparing for this video, I thought that this wine would show least of all, you know, the energy or being alive. I was not expecting much from it, and it delivers more. I think it almost have more liveliness to it than the wine number 2, because the fruit is more prominent, it is more present, it shows, you know, some of that dried character, jammy character, exactly like the vintage was described. And when you read about this vintage, they said it was powerful and rich and concentrated fruit. And I think it translates. You feel that it is at some point in its life being powerful, rich, and concentrated. And on the palate, this wine is alive. Like, not only is it alive, you know, I told you in the beginning that nose is the first indication whether or not we should taste something. It had an inviting nose. It had a fruit flavors that you just wanted to try. And continuing that thought, on the palate, this wine showed mid-palate. So on the mid-palate, there was fruit, it was packed, it was beautiful. It has acidity, of course, but it is not out of context. It is not stripped of its fruit, which is really important. This is absolute surprise to me. And it has beautiful, beautiful aftertaste. It is like really ripe strawberries, really ripe black cherries, raspberries. Beautiful finish. Okay. I, of course, don't know what they have added at that time, but it holds its ground really nicely in the glass, on the palate, and from the scale. How alive is this wine? I will give this wine 8 points. It is quite alive. So let's move to wine number 4, which is Barolo from 1957 vintage. Sorry, you guys, but this wine gives you nose that you do not want to try. It is a bit of, you know, nail polish remover, a lot of vinegar, and there is a bit of funkiness or, you know, like dirtiness to it. It ultimately smells of wet, really old socks. No, it is not wine that you want to try. I'm sorry. And I love my Barolos, and no, this is not nice. This was, by the way, one wine that I could not pull cork off. It is really small, the cork itself. So when I use my trustworthy fork, it simply pushed the cork inside, and I think this wine has enjoyed quite a lot of oxygen over its time. I don't think that this specific cork did a very good job with this wine. I'm sorry. Just so you know, and so you see how this wine looks. Yeah, it does not look particularly lively or, you know, anything that is inviting, neither on the nose nor on the palate. It's, in all honesty, it stinks. And from the scale from 1 to 10, I would say that this is goner and it's 1. Or if it's from 1 to 10, then it's 1. Yeah, it's gone. All right, you guys, so this was quite interesting experiment. So 2 out of 4 wines showed some liveliness to them despite their magnificent age. Unfortunately, it was the Italians that failed me this time. Usually I am in love with Italian wines. I do enjoy them quite a lot. But Bordeaux was a beautiful surprise. I did not expect it to be alive. Reading what I read in preparation for this video, I had no expectations from Chateauneuf-du-Pape, and this showed the most promise in the glass and on the nose. So that was interesting. All of these wines were bought on auction, so I did not pay too much for them, but I mean, it is also a risk that you have to take, because I did pay for these bottles and they ended up dead. So I cannot enjoy them or use them in any way. It is still a nice experience. I will tell you this though, despite the fact that these 2 wines were relatively lively for their age, let's say that, or let's call it that, I still personally myself prefer more fruit, more generosity. So I think that my sweet spot would be up to 20, 30 years of age for wines. You know, Bordeaux, of course, you kind of want to have a bit older, and then there are a few other wines that really shine in old age. But I do love young and vibrant and fresh wines. And if you like older wine styles, that's fine as well. This is just my personal preference. And I think it is nice that each of these bottles have their consumer at every stage of their life. Let me know in the comment section below about your experience with old wines. Do you like older vintages? Do you like younger wine styles? What do you think about these wines? Do you know why this aged so poorly? And please stay on No Sediment YouTube channel by watching this video next.